My name is Leon Zimmerman, and I was a statehouse correspondent. I was called Trenton correspondent. I was assigned to cover the summit when it was announced, and another staffer and I came here along with a photographer. And the newspaper was going to use the wire services for a lot of the big stuff, wherever they needed to get national, international perspective. And we were there to just send back the stories that, what we witnessed. And that's basically how I wound up here 56 years ago. Well, we were told immediately that we had to get special credentials. And we all had press cards back then as statehouse reporters. And the newspapers gave cards to us as reporters. And you had to produce those kinds of IDs in order to get this special pass. So we had to go across the road, which I don't know, it's Mullock Hill Road or it's 322, but we had to go across to the gymnasium, which was set up as the press center. And they had typewriters on tables and phones on tables, but there weren't enough for everybody because I think there were close to 1,000 journalists. And one of the things that they did set up was payphones outside the gym. And of course, today, nobody knows what a payphone is. So it was a cloth press pass, which was unusual, and it had a string attached to it, which you wrapped around the button on your shirt or suit or whatever you could do that, and you had to wear that. And as you know, I have donated that to Rowan for their case of memorabilia. Well, excited is one way of saying it because it was an exciting atmosphere, but it was hectic. That would be the word. I mean, it was crowded. And as an example, when I went over to the press area, tried to use a phone and got yelled at by some guy, say, that's a private phone, you can't use that. And typewriters were not easily accessible. We weren't really typing all that much. We dictated by phone because it was during the day and we were an evening newspaper. And so I remember asking where are the payphones. And so I used a payphone outside, I remember that. No, I took notes, I dictated over the phone. That's what I did anytime I was remote. We dictated word for word and even dictated punctuation, although we were dictating to copy editors who didn't like that. They felt they were responsible for correct punctuation and, I guess, spelling. Most of the time we had to run because we didn't want to miss anything, but of course, we didn't go there until after the appearance by the players on stage, as I call them. And I didn't write that, but I just refer to them that way now. So we would go back there, back and forth, and a lot of time we spent waiting for the president's entourage and Kosygin's entourage. So it was a lot of wait time. I can't say that it wasn't boring. It was exciting in that sense because we were in anticipation for what was about to come, and the travel, the back and forth, was pretty minimal once things got rolling. I had what I would liken to a steno pad, but it wasn't as wide as a steno pad. Newspaper reporters had a narrower, it was about half the width of a steno pad, and we just took notes, and there were the old newspaper pencils, the thick pencils with thick ink, lead in them, and we would just take notes that way. And so when you're dictating a story, you're dictating really from your head and looking at your notes. Now, I can't remember for sure, but it was so hectic in the gymnasium, the press area, that I don't believe I spent much time typing things out at all, if at all. I don't remember that. So I probably was all dictating. So we waited and waited for hours for something that probably was 20 minutes. Well, I think it was obvious to all the journalists. I can't say, well, I mean, the people, the spectators or the visitors or the, people just looking on may not have been thinking that. We did, of course. We're realizing, what are they going to come away with? They're talking about what was going on in the Middle East. There was a lot of criticism by opposition parties concerning Israel and whether they were doing the right thing or not the right thing. Nuclear proliferation, non-proliferation, I should say. Vietnam was big then, and all the hot button issues. We knew that's probably what they were going to be covering. And of course, they told us that afterwards, and a lot of information was given out by the press people for the president. And I'm sure there were Russian people in Kosygin's entourage who were talking to their media people. As it turns out, there was no agreement afterwards, and no formal agreement. But President Johnson, and I'm sure Premier Kosygin spoke in his language to his audience, made statements which were in print, which were used about what it meant that we looked at each other face to face, eye to eye. I think eye to eye was what he said. And you get to know somebody better when you do that. And it gives them a better understanding of what they're thinking for the future. And so that was the most hopeful you could get out of it. It was disappointing in a way that it wasn't the bigger story, was some pact was going to be produced that, would be, in print and then last for all time. It was not, that was probably the only disappointing thing about it. It did. It laid the groundwork for future discussions and so forth, yeah. And I have to tell you that it's almost mind-boggling that I'm sitting here talking to you and that 56 years ago, that I stood in a crowd like that, covering the biggest story in the world at that point in time. And I wasn't even thinking about that. Now, as I reflect on it, I realize the significance even more. But I don't know that I have any perspective about it that's any different. That it was, I'm on to the next story, so to speak, which is what you had to do. You had to concentrate on the next one that came up.